myself, and I would be taking you through the first 10 minutes or so. And we would be discussing in that course what to do to prevent that eventuality of dropping something into the posterior segment. The topic has been titled aptly, as suggested by Dr. Sanghamitra, a stitch at 9 in time saves 9. What it means basically is, this is a proverb, an old saying in Brit's world. And what it means essentially is, if you try to stitch a smaller gap that has been produced in a fabric or on a piece of cloth, it might just save you the labor of stitching or putting in more stitches later on. So it will thereby save you the extra labor required for its management later on. I'll not go into the virtually time-consuming, and if I might add, audaciously, the boring aspect of going through it again and again. There are things you need, there are things you have to have at bay. I just precisely concise it. There are a few prerequisites on the surgeon's front, and there are also a few prerequisites that should be there in the OT available to you, which should allow you to breathe easy. The prerequisites from the surgeon's end would be absolute focus. The attention should be undivided. The suspicions should be of highest degree, because sometimes the cataracts, the nuclei are very dense. So to see through a posterior capsular rupture through those nuclear substances might be difficult. So suspicion also has to be high, and you always have to be alert. And the recognition has to be instant, because the earlier it is recognized, diagnosed, the earlier you have a swing around. On the trolley, you need to have a few things. These are absolute life-saving things. A dispersive viscoelastic, which spreads itself and produces a capsular bandage on which you can do your maneuvers. Sharp and new vitrectomy cutters, 23, 25, whatever gauge you use, whatever that comes with the assembly of your phaco machine. And a multi-piece intraocular lens, which is a must-have in the armamentarium of the anterior segment surgeon whenever he proceeds to do a cataract surgery. So let's go straight into 3 different situations that I've had over the period of time. I've just selected 3 situations wherein I had the scenario of a posterior capsular rupture early, and how did I save myself and save the day for myself and my retina colleague in Dr. Sanghamitra to an extent. I'm not saying that I'm always successful, but I was successful in 3 of these incidents at least. So this first case belongs to a relatively young individual, high myopic, and an extremely leathery cataract. So I go about chopping the nucleus by burying the phaco tip into the substance. I do manage to horizontally chop the nucleus into 2 different fragments. The primary chop is complete. And when I go to the secondary chops and divide the quadrants, look at how leathery it is, how much of pressure I have to put on the nuclear substance to split it into 2. But I do manage to crack it open. At least 2 heminuclei are produced. But at then the same time, keep an eye on this proximal segment of the nucleus. While I proceed with the nuclear chops, you will see that the proximal segment is trying to disappear under the iris. Look at that. It's trying to disappear under the iris. That's the first sign that something's wrong there. I recognize it, but I continue chopping, because at the process of chopping, I wish to see whether the posterior capsule is intact on the far end or not. To my pleasure, I see that the posterior capsule is actually intact on that side. But the proximal segment is beginning to get lost, so I stop there. I just push the nucleus a little far, push in some viscoelastic. That's something we must do. That's a rule of thumb. Before withdrawing the phaco needle, the anterior chamber has to be filled with profuse amount of viscoelastics. And then I dislodge the the proximal segment, bring it up, coat the posterior capsule with dispersive viscoelastic, and on top of that, I continue the phacoemulsification process. I do have 1 complete heminucleus down below, so I do have support for my PC. I'm not touching it again. So I continue phacoemulsifying the remainder. Only when I come to the last piece, I stop, put in a multi-piece IOL, which will be used as a scaffold, put it in the sulcus. I have enough visibility to engage the nucleus, to engage the IOL properly, dial it into the sulcus. Now I can comfortably, over the support of the IOL optic, finish off the remainder of the nuclear fragment, emulsify it, and then possibly do a bit of vitrectomy, remove the epinuclear plate that's remaining. I have to remind myself all the time there's a very high myopics, the vitreous is liquefied. So if I falter anywhere and there is an opening, the vitreous might just leak and come up and thrust the IOL. So this is the end of the case, and the patient did very well post-operatively. So this was situation one. The other situation came in where in a bright sunny morning, a patient walked into my chamber with a total mature cataract in one eye. Pretty routine, there was nothing to worry. Till I saw a warning signal come in when I examined the other eye to find a posterior polar cataract there. Interested, I subjected this patient to an anterior segment OCT, which revealed the posterior capsule already being open with the PPC. So what do? I construct a large CCC here. The reason for that is I wanted to have a larger opening of the anterior capsule because after a minimal hydrodissection, I wanted to prolapse the nucleus into the anterior chamber and with profuse viscoelastic support, chop the nucleus into two fragments first. Why I wanted to chop that into two fragments first is because I cannot see anything down below. So I push the two fragments onto both sides so that I have a corridor of visibility here, which is transmitting broad daylight. And through that corridor of visibility, I put in the multi-piece IOL to act as a scaffold. Now, the difference here is I do not push it in all the way. I keep one haptic on the surface of the iris because I don't know where it would be going because I don't have that much visibility here. I coat the endothelium once again with dispersive viscoelastic, profuse amount of it, and start chopping. I have the optic support now, so I'm safe. I'm sure that the fragments are not dropping any further. I finish it off. Now I have a large chunk of epinuclear plate behind the IOL, but I don't want to do vitrectomy right now because it might drop. So I use the optic edge to nudge the epinucleus plate on top of it. So it comes atop, and then I consume it through bimanual irrigation aspiration. Now is the time when the IOL can be dialed into the sulcus. And then the opening of the primary posterior polar cataract can be converted into a regular opening by a microrhexis forceps, minimal vitrectomy. We have not disturbed the anterior hyaloid face much here. And then finally, the IOL can be positioned to be centered perfectly right in the middle. And we can close the case here. After doing so many maneuvers in the anterior chamber virtually, because of the fact that we have used copious amounts of dispersive viscoelastic to coat the endothelium, you would see in the photograph that follows on the first post-operative day itself, the cornea looks pristine and the vision was very good as well. That concludes the second situation where you have a pre-existing PC defect. How do you go about it? The third case is rather interesting. This was another patient who had a routine cataract. There was no history of trauma, nothing revealed with anterior segment OCT and the other modalities of investigation, including a ray tracing biometry. This patient chose femtolaser cataract surgery. So this patient has already been femtoed. By the time the patient was brought into the OT, the pupil had constricted. So after opening the main section, we pick up the action by putting in a bit of adrenaline to dilate the pupil. Now you see the pupil starting to get dilated. And the moment I start injecting visco, I take the visco cannula in. To my surprise, I see this is what's in there. The whole back complex is subluxated. I try to do a minimal hydro, try to manually rotate the nucleus a bit because I wanted to have some space to put in my CTR to carry on. But as you can see, this is very mobile, the capsule. I do successfully put in a CTR, but this case would require two Ahmed segments on both sides. But my experience with two segments is so bad in the past few years. They just don't stay with the ninoprolene sutures that we use to stabilize them. I try to win over my luck for the day. try to nudge into the nuclear substance a little bit, try to separate them, try to consume the pieces. But I soon realized that this is too mobile a piece. Even if I do some heroics and put in the IOL, it's not going to stay perhaps. So I have to take another measure. I decide for that very soon, leave the case there without trying further. Look at that subluxation. Go to the superior end, inject some lignocaine, perform a spherocorneal section. Easily the nucleus pops up with the entire bag and CTR complex. I remove it. No trauma induced to the eye. Do some vitrectomy. Put in some pilocarpine. Manually irritate the iris so that the pupil comes down. Now, my method of secondary IOL has been many over the years, but right now I am zeroing in on the iris claw IOL. This has worked very, very well in my hands, at least in the last few years. So this is the posterior fixation technique of the iris claw IOL. Very easy, short, not at all time taking. Just nudge the iris tissue into the clip, and there it goes. So one side done, go to the other side. The pupil looks very good, it's round, regular, right in the middle. And you can do a PI too, but the optic is so small in dimension, it normally does not cause a pupillary block post-operatively. The stability of the lens can be judged by the fact that I did a vitrectomy on the superior front where the pupil is peaking slightly, but there's nothing to worry. This is the first post-op day the patient had 6x6 uncorrected. So there are many methods by which you can escape the virtually inevitable. However, we will see a lot of those other secondary IOL techniques later on during Manmat's talks and the others. But this is what I had to share. A stitch in time saves 9. So that's where